AI in writing. It's a controversial topic. Some people swear by it, others think it's just ruining creativity. But here's the thing. I used to believe that AI would take over my writing, would dull my creativity, until I realized something surprising. It's not a replacement, it's a tool. And when it's used the right way, it can actually make you a better writer. So today, I'm sharing 5 surprising ways that AI can supercharge your writing. And trust me, number 3 was a game changer for me. So how do we, as writers, make the most of AI without losing our creativity? That's exactly what I'm exploring in this series. Hi, Shamai, I'm KM James, a writer figuring out how to use AI as a tool without letting it take over. AI can help us to break through creative blocks, build richer characters, and make the editing process way less painful. And today, I'm going to show you how. Way number 1 is about breaking through writer's block. So we're going to start by feeding a prompt into AI. So here's ChatGPT version 4.0, and I'm going to feed in the prompt, what's a surprising conflict that could break up a couple in a romance novel? Let's have a look what it comes up with. A surprising conflict that could break up a couple in a romance novel is a hidden act of love that feels like betrayal, where one character does something for the other's benefit, but it backfires and feels like a deep betrayal instead. The unwanted sacrifice. One partner secretly turns down a life-changing opportunity, a dream job, a prestigious award, a major move, because they don't want to leave the relationship behind. But when the other partner finds out, they're devastated. Not because they wanted them to go, but because they were never given the choice. It shakes the foundation of trust, making them question whether they were seen as an equal partner or as someone who needed protecting. As a heart-wrenching mix of love and hurt, where one character thought they were proving their commitment, while the other sees it as proof they were never truly trusted to make the decision together. This kind of conflict is especially powerful in a romance because it's not about lack of love, it's about misguided love. The resolution requires not just forgiveness, but a shift in how they approach their relationship, moving from protecting each other to trusting each other. So if we remember why we did this prompt, it was to help us get through writer's block, to spark some ideas. And that is exactly what AI has given us, a spark. So what we need to do now, because we can't take it as it is. If we took it as it is, it would be predictable. It would be generic and kind of boring. It doesn't have any depth. So we need to look at it first. What works? What in this conflict that it's provided me, what is strong? I mean, the conflict is not about a lack of love, is it? It's about love that's shown in the wrong way, really. It's turning those life-changing opportunities that you'd think would be a grand gesture, but actually the fallout is completely unexpected and completely the opposite. There are also relatable stakes. Many people struggle with the balance between love and personal ambition. There's an internal conflict going on as well. It's a betrayal that isn't rooted in lies or cheating, but in sort of good intentions that have gone wrong. It's a strong conflict. Both characters are coming from a place of love, but they're hurting each other in the process. So that's a nice conflict. That's not a nice conflict, but it's a good example of a conflict. And the core question is, does love mean protecting someone or trusting them to choose? So that's a nice conflict to take throughout your story. But what's missing from this? How do you improve from this point? It's about deepening that conflict. What was the thought process behind what the character did? Why did they believe that sacrificing their dream was the best choice? How would the betrayed partner react? Do they lash out immediately? Does resentment build over time? What's the personal wound? What maybe in their past makes the decision feel like a deeper betrayal? What are the stakes? Does this break up their relationship, or does it make them question their future together? Now, you could come up with those answers. You could use ChatGPT again to gain those prompts, that little spark of inspiration to help you shape those answers. So I might go back to chat here and say, why would someone turn down a life-changing opportunity without telling their partner? And they might then chat and give me the response, maybe they grew up watching a parent prioritize work over family and promised they'd never do the same. Or maybe they were once left behind by someone they loved and now fear becoming the one who leaves. I mean, now we're getting somewhere. We're getting into personal motivations. This isn't just about the relationship. It's about the past wounds influencing their present choices. What makes it personal? How to make this unique to the story characters. What's their dream? What does turning it down actually cost them? What's their partner's biggest fear, and how does this confirm it? They need to work together. Their fears with their actions need to conflict as well. What's the breaking point? The conversation, a realization, or the dramatic reveal of this? So again, you could go back to ChatGPT and you could ask it, what is a unique, high-stakes example of this conflict playing out? Character A secretly turns down a prestigious international fellowship, believing it's the ultimate act of love. Months later, character B accidentally finds the acceptance letter, realizing they were never given a choice in their own future. Well, this takes the conflict from being theoretical to tangible. Now we have a specific incident, an emotional reveal, and a power balance that's at play. But we could refine it further. I mean, what if character A didn't just turn it down, but maybe arranged for the offer to go to someone else, ensuring that they could never change their mind? What if character B learns about the sacrifice through someone else, making the betrayal feel even bigger? Now that we have a unique spin, we have an extra layer that makes this conflict feel personal to these characters and not just a generic missed opportunity trope. We might explore next what the breaking point is, because that is important to be able to work back in our story. So you might add a prompt here. What's a powerful scene where this conflict reaches its peak? And ChatGPT gave me, character B is celebrating a major career win when a friend casually mentions how selfless character A was for turning down that dream job. At first, character B laughs it off, until they see the regret in character A's eyes. Realization dawns. This wasn't a choice they made together, it was a choice made for them. Well, what I quite like about that is it makes the reveal public, which adds quite a big layer of tension. Instead of it being a private argument, character B has to hold it together while their world crumbles around them. It also builds the shock. Character B doesn't find out in a quiet moment, but in a way that leaves them a little bit blindsided. We could tweak that further, or we could look at an alternative. We could look at how character A, so these are the ideas I came up with from the prompt that ChatGPT said. Character A could finally confess, expecting gratitude but only to be met with heartbreak. Character B maybe tries to undo the sacrifice, but it's too late. The fallout isn't just emotional, but it changes how they see each other. It is a betrayal of trust. So to turn the concept that AI gave us into an actual story, we have to look at deeper character motivation. Why did they do this? We have to look at the personal stakes. What does it cost them beyond the relationship? We have to look at that pivotal reveal scene. What moment shatters their trust? and an emotional fallout that feels earned. How does this change them? Number 2, enhancing character development. So to use a prompt for characters, I might use something like, describe a flawed character, a flawed but relatable character. Let's see what we got. So here's a flawed but deeply relatable character, Sienna Harper, 32, freelance travel novelist. She's got commitment issues, self-sabotaging tendencies, struggles with vulnerability. She's adventurous, fiercely loyal from a distance, and witty. Oh wow, AI, you don't have to keep going on. She spent the last decade hopping from one country to another, chasing stories, cultures, and experiences, anything to keep moving. She's magnetic, the kind of person who lights up a room with stories of wild adventures, but ask her to stay and she'll vanish before you can blink. She tells herself she's just not built for stability. The idea of settling down, of being truly known, terrifies her. Relationships, she's had them, intense, passionate, short-lived. The moment things start feeling too real, she finds a reason to leave. It wouldn't have worked out anyway, she tells herself. Her biggest fear, that if she stops running, she'll have to face the parts of herself she doesn't want to see. The loneliness, the doubts, the nagging feeling that she's not as free as she pretends to be. Then one day she's forced to return home. Maybe it's a family emergency, maybe an assignment goes wrong. Whatever it is, she's stuck. And in the quiet and the stillness, she's forced to confront the truth. What if running isn't the same as living? She's relatable because we all know what it's like to fear vulnerability. She's flawed in ways that feel real. Self-sabotage, avoiding emotions, craving connection, but fearing it at the same time. She's funny, charismatic, and independent, making her easy to love even when she frustrates us. Would you want her to find a happily ever after, or should she be a tragic lesson to what happens when we don't face our fears? Oh, that's horrible. Wow, AI, that went dark quick. So AI has given us a good, solid foundation, really. Sienna is an interesting character. She has flaws, she has strengths, and she has an internal conflict between those flaws and those strengths. She's a loyal person, but she's also afraid of commitment. So that makes her compelling. But let's break it down and see if we can take it any further. So the first thing you'd look at is what actually does work. What in this can I take away? I think the flaws, commitment issues, self-sabotage, fear of vulnerability. The strengths, adventurous, loyal from a distance, witty, core internal conflict, she runs from connection, but secretly she craves it. So these make her feel more human. And it makes her into a character that feels real. The fear of vulnerability flaw is something that people relate to, so it makes her engaging. But what's missing? Where does AI fall short? It's too generic. I mean, this type of character has been done before. Many times. It lacks specifics. What exactly caused her fear of commitment? You know, it's too vague. It doesn't have a unique voice. Her description sounds like a profile. It doesn't sound like a person. There's no distinct personality or the way that she sees the world. So right now, Sienna is interesting, but she's also a little bit predictable. If we want her to stand out, we need to push further. We need to look back at her past. So AI can give us these general character ideas, but it's our job as writers to make them personal, to make them specific and surprising. So the next step would then be to refine this further. And you could use a follow-up prompt here to AI. So what I put in was, why does Sienna fear commitment? What happened in her past that shaped this? And this was the response that it gave. Sienna's father was a dreamer. He always chased adventure, but it came at a cost. He never stayed. She grew up believing that love and stability can't coexist because she's only ever seen love leave. Right, okay, so now we're actually starting to get somewhere. It's much more of a personal reason for her commitment issues. It's not just she's scared of relationships. It's that she associates love with being abandoned. And this will also tell us when we're writing how she's going to respond in these situations when someone offers her love. She's going to run, isn't she, before they can. So it creates this deeper character that's real. Making her fear more subtle, she may not even realise that she's running. Maybe she always finds a reason to leave. She's likely got a coping mechanism. She might joke about always being on the move, but deep down, she knows that she's avoiding things. It can also give her a distinct voice. How does she talk? I picture her as being someone perhaps who's sarcastic. She might over-romanticize her own life to avoid the truth. Just a few tweaks can make Sienna feel a lot more real. AI can give us the skeleton, but we can bring the soul. So, if AI can brainstorm the character ideas, it's not going to be able to create the depth for you. That's where your creativity comes in. The great character isn't just a list of traits. They have to have unique perspectives, a personal wound, and a voice that makes them unforgettable. So next time, when we're using AIs for character development, you need to ask yourself, what works well? What is missing? And how can we make it personal for the character? 3, outlining faster and smarter. So let's have a look at the prompt for number 3 then. I've decided to go for outline a 3-act structure for a romance novel. It's a big ask, let's see what it does. Here's a solid 3-act structure from a romance novel, incorporating emotional depth, romantic tension, and satisfying resolution. It's exciting. So it's giving me Act 1 setup. Establish the protagonist, their goals, that's the purpose of it. Introduce the protagonist, show their misbelief. They get their first meeting and the initial conflict, a moment that establishes the dynamic and chemistry. Forced proximity, something forces them together. First moment of vulnerability. End of Act 1, the point of no return. Flipping their Act 1 world into Act 2. Act 2, 50% of the novel is all about push and pull. It's covering the growing closer and deepening attraction. The midpoint, doubts then start to creep in after the midpoint. You've got the almost moment where they almost confess or almost get what they want before it gets ripped away from them. And then they get the big all is lost, which is the breakup scene. And then you go into Act 3, which is the resolution. The grand gesture comes into it. They get their moment of clarity, their final push, and then their resolution before the happy ever after. So it creates a compelling emotional journey, but ChatGPT's then broken it down into what you need to include in all of these areas. So it's given us an outline that is solid. It's given us a 3-act structure. It's outlined all the essential beats, the setup, the conflict, climax, resolution. It's given us something on emotional arcs, hinging from internal and external conflict, reinforcing that sort of push-pull dynamic that you find in a romance novel. It's given us clear progression. The story moves from resistance to emotional bonding, as it were, conflict, and then the grand resolution. It's given us a roadmap. It's included major turning points that are already laid out for us. But here's the thing, it is generic. To make it your story, we need to tailor it to your characters, the conflict, and your emotional stakes. So what's missing? How can we deepen the outline for your specific story? Now, the character's specific goals and conflicts, they're not there. What does the protagonist want, and what's stopping them from getting it? What makes this love story stand out from others? What's the unique romance hook? What's at risk if they fail to be together? What are the stakes of the story? What unique twist could raise those stakes? Something to do with the all is lost moment, perhaps, or the midpoint. So you can put some of these things back into ChatGPT. So I put back in, how can I make my romance outline feel unique to my characters instead of generic? And it came back with, you tie each story beat to your character's personal struggles. Make their fears, flaws, and desires shape every turning point in the novel. So AI can guide you through. It can't write your story for you and write a deep, compelling, unforgettable story, but it can guide you through how you can do that. It can give you the structure, but only you can personalize it. So how do we adapt this outline to your story? Well, I would start by defining the protagonist's core flaws and desires. What do they want at the start of the story? Maybe it's love, success, independence, or redemption. And what's their biggest fear about love? Could it be being abandoned, losing themselves, repeating past mistakes, maybe? When it says they can't be together because of emotional baggage, well, this is very unhelpful in a way. Yes, you know it needs to be, but it's so open, it could be anything. But we could, from that, then refine it. We could look at, well, maybe she was abandoned by her mother and believes that relationships don't last. Perhaps he's afraid of becoming his father, who prioritized ambition over love. So now we've got two people who feel they can't be together because of this emotional baggage from their past. It gives us a unique internal struggle that's going to drive their romance forward. I would then adapt the inciting incident and the first meeting. How do they meet in a way that's fresh and engaging? What immediate conflict puts them at odds? So AI suggested they meet at work and don't get along. Well, maybe she's an investigative journalist writing an expose on his business. Well, he's going to be her reluctant source who's forced to work with her. So by adding an external conflict immediately, it makes their dynamic more compelling. It adds external conflict. I would then strengthen the midpoint and the all is lost. So what happens that makes them believe they could work together? You know, that midpoint is that turning point, isn't it, in the story? What's the most painful way to separate them before the final act? That's going to come from their fears. What do they fear the most that you're basically going to throw at them in that final all is lost? AI suggested they start to believe in their relationship, that something pulls them apart. She discovers he's been hiding a secret, maybe, that could destroy her career. He was protecting someone, but to her, it feels like a betrayal. So tying their conflict to their personal values, trust, ambition, integrity, it makes it hit harder. And then we deepen the grand gesture and the emotional resolution. What would truly prove that the protagonist has changed? What sacrifice, maybe a realization or act of love would show they're choosing their partner fully? So AI said one confesses their love and they get back together. Maybe he publishes the expose himself, even though it means losing everything to prove that he believes in her. So the best happy ever afters aren't just romantic. They prove that the characters have evolved, that they've learned their lesson from that story. So in conclusion, turning AI's outline into a strong romance novel, AI can give you the bones, but you have to bring the heart. Every turning point should reflect personal struggles and growth. The conflict should be unique, layered, and emotionally powerful. The resolution should feel earned, not just romantic, but transformative. 4. Drafting with momentum. So for this example, when I'm drafting, because it's such a fast process, you're basically vomiting your brain onto the page. And you don't want to slow yourself down. You don't want to have to stop to put descriptions of things in. So I would normally use like a square bracket or a star to say insert description of a lighthouse. And then when I go back through in my editing stage, I would search for those stars and I would insert them. But I can use ChatGPT to help me. So using the idea of the lighthouse, I could use a prompt like, describe an eerie abandoned lighthouse at sunset. Let's see what it can do. The lighthouse stood at the edge of the jagged cliffs, its once bright beacon now a hollow eye staring blindly out to sea. The last light of the setting sun bled across the sky in streaks of crimson and burnt orange, casting low, claw-like shadows over the weathered stone. The tower's paint, once white, had faded to a ghostly grey, its surface cracked and peeling like ancient parchment. The wind howled through the rusted railings of the upper balcony, rattling loose bolts and making the old glass panes shudder in protest. A tattered rope dangled from the side, swaying with an eerie rhythm, as if some unseen force still climbed it in the dying light. The heavy iron door, slightly ajar, gaped like an unspoken warning, its hinges shrieking when stirred by the wind. Inside, the air was thick with salt and decay. The wooden steps, warped with time, creaked under even the lightest breath of movement. Fragments of past lives lingered, an overturned chair, a shattered lantern, the ghost of footprints in dust undisturbed for years. And in the lantern room above, the glass had clouded over as if the lighthouse itself refused to see what lurked beyond the horizon. Below, the tide crashed hungrily against the cliffs, whispering secrets in the language of the drowned. And as the last slither of sun dipped beneath the waves, the lighthouse stood silent, watching, waiting, remembering. So from this description, do the same as we did for the other ones. What works? Why is this description effective? Well, it creates a strong, eerie tone, which is what we asked for. And it uses vivid imagery to do this. It goes over sensory details very well. It looks at what we can see, what we can hear and feel in that environment. It makes the lighthouse feel alive. It's waiting, it's remembering, which adds tension to the scene. There's also grounding elements in there as well about the wind and the sea, so it keeps the scene quite immersive. It is dripping with mood and tension, which is what you want for an eerie setting. But what's missing? How can we make it more effective? I would say pacing and length is probably a big one. Does every sentence add something new? Does it slow your scene down? This is a long description for something that you might just want to describe once and move on. If it's a big deal to your story, then yes, you would probably describe it for a lot longer. If it's central to your world building, then yes, you're going to need it to be described more. But if it's just a moment of, there's a lighthouse over there that looks a bit eerie, you want to move on. You don't want to slow your scene down. What about the character it connects to? At the moment, from this description, we don't know if someone is experiencing it or whether we're just observing it. We don't know its focus or its intent. What emotion should this scene evoke? Should it be a nostalgic scene? Is there dread going on? Is there a foreboding happening? There's also not much balance of the detail. Some of the descriptions are perhaps a bit more redundant, a bit repetitive. It's picking out the ones that pack the biggest punch. So I went back to ChatGPT and I asked it, how can I make this description more concise while keeping its eerie atmosphere? So AI gave me the answer of focus on the most striking details, cut anything that repeats an idea and keep the reader moving forward. So it's given me a way forward, how to do it. AI descriptions do tend to be overboard with adjectives and imagery and things, and it's our job to trim out the excess, the things that we don't need, and keep the most impactful lines. And what's impactful to one writer may not be to another or another. So how one writer would trim that down and make it their own, you could end up with something completely different to another writer who starts with it. It is just a breadcrumb that ChatGPT is giving you. It is not the end piece. So how can you adapt that to your story? I suppose you would start with clarifying your scene's purpose. Why is this scene important? Does it set the mood, reveal something, or foreshadow danger? Who is experiencing this place? How does their perspective shape the description? A specific personality or a fear they might have would change the description, the way you describe it from a different character's point of view. What emotion do you want your reader to feel in looking at this eerie lighthouse? Do you want them to feel unsettled, maybe a bit mournful? Do they want to feel in awe of something? When AI said the lighthouse stood alone at the edge of the jagged cliffs, you could refine it. She hesitated at the threshold, the lighthouse looming above her like a forgotten sentinel. So instead of having a detached description, anchoring it to a person's perspective will make it more engaging. You'd want to trim and strengthen the word choice. What details are the most striking? You'd keep those. Where are ideas repeated? Cut them or combine them. Are there any adjectives? Choose stronger, more precise words for those adjectives. So for example, where it says the wind howled through the rusted railings of the upper balcony, rattling loose bolts and making the old glass panes shudder in protest. A more concise version of saying that would be the wind keened through rusted railings, rattling loose bolts and trembling the glass. That's it. Don't need to say anymore. Another example where it says the last light of the setting sun bled across the sky in streaks of crimson and burnt orange, casting long claw-like shadows over the weathered stone. You might say something like, the setting sun bled crimson across the sky, shadows clawing at the weathered stone. Can you see how I've kept the imagery that I liked, the bled across the sky, the crimson, the weathered stone, the shadows, the idea of it claw-like, it clawing at it, and I've put them together into a sentence. It can make the descriptions tighter and more impactful. Adding a human or narrative element, is there an implied danger or a mystery that should be clearer? How does this place connect to the story? What small, unexpected detail makes it more memorable? So when AI says a tattered rope dangled from the side, swaying with an eerie rhythm, as if some unseen force, I did that in the reading, still climbed it in the dying light. You might add some mystery to that, and you might say something like, a rope dangled from the balcony, frayed and worn, as if someone had tried and failed to escape. You might also, so when it says fragments of past lives lingered, an overturned chair, a shattered lantern, the ghost of footprints in dust undisturbed for years. You might change that to being a single chair lay on its side, its legs tangled in dust and ropes, as if someone had left in a hurry and never returned. Makes it feel lived in. Adding in suggestions of past events can make the setting feel more alive and ominous. So in conclusion, the final takeaway from this is how to use AI without losing your voice. So AI gives descriptive inspiration, but you have to refine it for clarity and for impact. Keep what serves the story, cut what slows it down. Anchor your descriptions in character perspectives for deeper engagement. Make the settings feel like they've been lived in by adding in history or tension. 5, editing and refining drafts. For this, we're going to look at how we can take our drafts and refine them into sentences that are more impactful. So I might have used something like this as a prompt. She walked into the room nervously as if expecting something to happen. I would ask ChatGPT then to rewrite this to sound more engaging. Let's see what it comes up with. She stepped into the room, hesitation threading through her movements, every breath tight with anticipation, like she was bracing for something unseen to unfold. What works in this improvement? It's more engaging. The verbs and the imagery are much better. Hesitation threading through her movements is a lot more vivid than walked nervously. The tension and the anticipation is better. The sentence builds a sense of unease without over-explaining itself. It also has a stronger flow and a rhythm. The phrasing creates a more immersive reading experience. The rewrite is already better than the original. It's more vivid and it sets a stronger mood. But let's refine it even more to make it sharper and deeper and more immersive. So let's look at what's missing, how to push it further. Point of view depth. Are we fully in the character's head, or are we still watching them from the outside? Stronger active voice. Can we make the sentence more immediate and less filtered? Sensory immersion. How can we enhance the tension with a physical or an emotional reaction? The clarity and tightness. Does every word add to the tension, or could it be more concise? A follow-up prompt to the AI that I might give it could be, make this sentence deeper in POV and remove any unnecessary filtering words. So ChatGPT came up with, she stepped into the room, muscles coiled tighter, breath shallow. Something was coming. She could feel it. Now we're getting closer to deep POV. The sentence feels more internal. It also feels more immediate. But let's go further. Let's see if we can make it more, fully immersive even. So how can we adapt the AI rewrite for even stronger prose? Deepen the POV. Are we fully inside the character's head? Are we avoiding the filtered words like she felt, she saw, to keep it more immediate? So AI's version is, she stepped into the room, muscles coiled tight, breath shallow, something was coming, she could feel it. How we might deepen it, we might say something like, she stepped into the room, muscles coiling, breath sharp. The air was wrong, too still, too expectant. Do you see how cutting she could feel it makes the sentence more immersive? We don't need to say that she feels it, just showing the tension lets the reader feel it. Strengthening the active voice and cut out redundancies. Is every word necessary, or are they just fluff? Can we tighten the sentence without losing impact? So when it says she stepped into the room, muscles coiled tight, breath shallow, tighten it, make it more active. She stepped inside, tension coiling beneath her skin. Or removing extra words maybe for the bit, every breath tight with anticipation, like she was bracing for something unseen or to unfold. We could just say, each breath shallow, bracing for the unseen. Doesn't need all the other words. Has the same impact. Cutting those words, it makes it sharper, more active and more powerful. Enhance the sensory details to build that suspense. How does the environment affect her senses? What does she hear, smell, feel? What one unexpected detail could add more atmosphere? Does her body react? Does she get goosebumps maybe? Does her pulse quicken maybe? A chill in the air? So AI's version, she stepped into the room, muscles coiled tight, breath shallow. Something was coming. She could feel it. If we add sensory and atmospheric details to that, we would get something like, she stepped inside, cold air curled around her ankles, the scent of damp wood thick in her throat. The silence stretched too long, like the room itself was waiting. Now, we're not just telling the reader that she's nervous, we're making them feel it through the grounding, through the sensory immersion that we've put them in. So the final takeaway, what's our conclusion to this? How to use AI without losing your voice. AI can refine clunky sentences, but it's our job to make them immersive. Deep point of view, it removes the filter words. It makes the scenes feel more immediate. Stronger verbs and precise details replace the over-explained sentences. Sensory elements turn good descriptions into atmospheric, engaging prose. AI doesn't replace creativity, it sparks it. It's like having a brainstorming buddy on standby. So here's the thing, AI isn't here to replace writers. It won't write your book for you, I am afraid to say, and it definitely won't capture your unique voice. But what it can do is give you a creative nudge when you need one. Whether you're stuck on a scene, need help brainstorming a plot twist, or you just want to shake things up, AI can be an amazing tool if you know how to use it. To make that easier, I've put together 2 free resources. One for when you need some serious inspiration, and one for when you just want to have a bit of fun with it. You'll get 10 prompts to supercharge your writing, designed to help with brainstorming, outlining, and character development. And for when you just want to experiment, I've included 10 prompts just for fun, because sometimes writing should be a little bit chaotic in the best ways. You can grab both for free in the description below. Try them out, experiment, and most importantly, make the ideas your own. Because let's be honest, we all deserve a little extra chaos in our lives. And don't worry, I made sure that none of the prompts include writing my whole novel for me. So if you like what you see here, if you're interested to see more, hit that like, hit the subscribe, and check me a comment below. The next video will be on using AI for character development. So I'll go into more detail than I did today on how to flesh out those characters. Hwyl fawr!